Somewhere in your house, or somewhere in your childhood, there was a toy ark. A little wooden boat. 2 by 2, the animals marched up the ramp. You filed it under fairy tale, and you never thought about it again. But that same story, a great flood that drowns the world, and a few survivors on a boat, turns up on the other side of the planet, in cultures that never met. Babylon, Greece, India, China, the Maya, Aboriginal Australia. So why does every ancient civilization remember the same flood? The answer changes everything you think you know about ancient myth, the world beneath the sea, and how far back human memory can actually reach. Let's start with the story you think you know, because the version with Noah isn't the original. It isn't even close. In 1872, a man named George Smith was hunched over a broken clay tablet in the British Museum, dug from the ruins of Nineveh. Pressed into the clay, in cuneiform, was a flood. A man warned by a god. A boat, every living thing carried inside. A bird sent out to search for dry land. Smith was so overwhelmed by what he was reading that, by one account, he leapt up and began tearing off his clothes in front of his colleagues. The tablet was part of the Epic of Gilgamesh. The survivor wasn't Noah, he was Utnapishtim. And his flood was already more than 1,000 years old when the book of Genesis told its version. And it doesn't stop in Mesopotamia. The Greeks had Deucalion, who wrote out the flood in a wooden chest. In India, Manu is warned by a fish and survives a deluge that erases mankind. In China, the waters swallow the land for generations. The Maya told it. Peoples who had never seen a Babylonian, never seen a Bible. They told it too. This isn't one story that spread. This is the same memory, surfacing everywhere. Almost every culture that ever learned to write wrote down a flood. And here's the part that should stop you cold. They weren't making it up. Because the world really did drown. Yours did. 20,000 years ago, the planet was buried under ice. As it melted, the oceans didn't creep up by inches. They rose by more than 120 meters. 400 feet of water, pouring over the edge of every continent. It took thousands of years, but in places it came in violent surges, the sea climbing 2.5 meters in a single century. Whole countries went under. Between Britain and Europe, there was a land we now call Doggerland. Hills, rivers, forests. Families who hunted there for thousands of years. Today it's the floor of the North Sea. An entire homeland gone. And in 1997, 2 geologists at Columbia University, William Ryan and Walter Pittman, proposed something even stranger. That around 600 years ago, the rising Mediterranean broke through a narrow neck of land and poured into the dry basin below, filling what is now the Black Sea. The water, they estimated, rose around 15 centimeters a day. Every day. For months. Anyone living on that shore would have watched the water climb toward their door and run. These weren't myths waiting to be invented. They were disasters that actually happened. To actual people. The flood isn't a story we dreamed up, it's a story we survived. But surviving something isn't the same as remembering it, and this is where it becomes almost impossible to believe. Because some of those people never forgot, and they never wrote it down, they simply told it, parent to child, child to child, for longer than you can picture. In 2016, a geographer named Patrick Nunn at the University of the Sunshine Coast published something extraordinary with the linguist Nick Reed. They had collected Aboriginal Australian stories from 21 different places around the entire coastline. And in every single one, the same memory. The sea used to be further out. There were islands you could walk to. Then the water came, and it never went back. When they checked those stories against the geology, the lost shorelines, the islands now underwater, they matched. These weren't legends. They were eyewitness descriptions of a coastline that vanished more than 7,000 years ago. Told out loud, accurately, across roughly 400 generations. That's not a myth. That's the oldest memory on Earth. Before writing, before history, someone stood on a disappearing shore, watched the sea take their world, and made certain that their grandchildren's grandchildren would know. We call them flood myths. We hand them to children with smiling animals, 2 by 2. But what if they were never myths at all? What if they're the truth? The oldest truth we have, worn smooth by 10,000 years of retelling. not a story invented to explain the world. A memory of the time the world ended. Every ancient civilization tells the same flood story for the simplest reason there is. It happened. The ice melted. The seas rose. Doggerland went dark beneath the North Sea. The Black Sea filled in a single season. And the people who saw it carried the memory further than any monument, any empire, any written word, all the way down to you. So the next time you see that little toy ark the animals climbing in 2 by 2, remember what it really is. Not a fairy tale. The longest, truest story we have ever told. And most of us never even knew.